seeing how much, because like all the best stuff, all the like the LNBits, the pointer site, like all the cool stuff which I made came out of one little tiny bar in Berlin, and then because it's like a real world environment where you can test your ideas, isn't it? Like a playground, we can actually run these things in the wild and get feedback. To have like an entire city and like entire country to be like inputting feedback on what they use and how they're using Bitcoin, maybe that's why we're getting all this crazy growth. Yeah. It's crazy.
The hate of men will pass and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure.
Welcome to One Love Bitcoin. Welcome back, brethren and sistrins. For this episode, we're going to be talking to Ben Ark from the United Kingdom. He's in Wales, Cardiff, in the United Kingdom. And so, I'm going to change up the format just a little bit going forward. And I would love to get you guys' feedback because since I'm doing a podcast, I really want to try and improve it. So if you think the episodes are too long, or if you think that they could be longer, I'm thinking of cutting them down to about half an hour. I think that should be good enough to cover a lot of the basic information I want to capture from each country. So, let me know what you think in the comments. But for now, I'm going to try and be keeping them to about 45 minutes. This one was longer. Talking with Ben was a joy. Like, he has so much information to give and is willing to share. And a lot of that stuff I didn't know. A lot of the things that he's building right now are just amazing. It's really driving adoption, really through tactile things that you can hold on to, things that you can play with, you can touch, you can feel. And a lot of people, especially the older generation, like my parents and aunts and uncles, they don't want to hear what Bitcoin is unless they can hold it in their hand, unless they can see it. My uncle said, I don't know what a Bitcoin is because I can't put it in my pocket and walk away with it. So I don't want it. And until we get over that sense, that mindset, or until we find a way to bridge that mindset into the future, then it's going to be hard to adopt. But anyway, it was a good episode. Hope you guys enjoy it. As usual, I'm going to have a faucet up for this episode. It's going to be, I think I'm going to put Wales. Yeah, wales.onelovebitcoin.com, because I might have another episode having to do with another city in the United Kingdom, since it's, so diverse. If you are in the UK, I would love if you guys were able to get this faucet first, to access it first. But the faucet is global, just like Bitcoin. So, there are no borders. Anywhere you are with an internet connection, you can access the faucet and claim your stats with a Lightning wallet. Of course, you have to be using a Lightning wallet to be able to scan the QR code on wales.onelovebitcoin.com. Also, as usual, I always give thanks to Swan. Swan got me started with my Bitcoin podcasting journey across the world, and I always give them big props, even though I take no money from them at all. This is not a paid advertisement, but it's just where I buy my Bitcoin every day. So not every day, I think I buy every month now. So feel free to check out Swan. And if you're not in the US, Swan Private can also take care of you if you're buying a large amount of money. And if you're not in the US and not buying a large amount of money, there's a lot of P2P solutions out there. I mean, there's Paxful, there's local Bitcoins, Telegram groups in your specific country. Actually, hit me up, because I know a lot of Telegram groups now that are trading peer-to-peer Bitcoin. So if you're looking for somewhere to buy Bitcoin and you're not in America, then shoot me a DM and I might be able to find a Telegram group for you where you can buy or sell Bitcoin. I mean, I wouldn't recommend selling, but you can buy or sell Bitcoin if you want. All right, enough of me yammering. Enjoy the show. Love Bitcoin, Mr. Ben Ark from the United
Thank you for having
Kingdom.
me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. I want to ask you, tell me your Bitcoin story. Tell me all about how you got into Bitcoin, how you got into tinkering with all this tech and the hardware part of Bitcoin. And, people from the UK are listening, so tell them where you're from too in the UK.
Yeah, so I'm in Swansea, and I'm Welsh, and I got into Bitcoin. I think we were quite lucky in the UK because in the US you had this negative news cycle early on about how Bitcoin was being used for dark markets, and that's how a lot of people, I mean, depending on what you want to use Bitcoin for, but that's how a lot of people first had contact with Bitcoin. So I guess, I mean, in the US, there's a whole bunch of people who are onboarded by that, of course, but then there are also people who kind of turned off by it because they thought it was like this, money which was invented for criminals. Whereas in the UK, we didn't really have that so much. We had quite positive news cycles. You'd have some like BBC tech correspondent dorking out over this new internet money and talking about it quite favorably. So we were kind of lucky, and that was quite early on as well. A lot of people in the UK, I think, heard of Bitcoin pretty early on. And then it's just a case of when do you actually, do the deep dive and start really learning about Bitcoin. And I have no idea when that was. It's so blurry. It was kind of osmosis for a long period. I used to teach some pretty difficult and challenging young people when I was teaching, and a lot of them were using Bitcoin on dark markets to get their dope from. I was kind of aware of it from there. And then for me, probably it was the 2008 stuff. So I was like, a cliched casualty of the 2008 with the buying, early young guy, getting on the ladder, the property ladder, like everyone expected you to and was encouraging you to, and then got on the ladder, and then a year later, I was in tens of thousands of pounds negative equity for my very generic one, bed apartment, which they built thousands, gazillions of during the boom period. And the property boom. So I was very much someone who was affected by that market cycle, and this idea of not being able to account for where all that money had gone, and this sort of the idea of Bitcoin being a triple entry bookkeeping, so having this ledger which was, you could verify where all the funds are, so you don't have this disparity of bookkeeping which we had in 2008, was quite appealing. And then as well as that whole process gave me a very poor, even though, I mean, I'd never had credit cards or anything, but going through that period of having to deal with negative equity on an apartment and then having to settle that, and then having to have mortgage breaks and whatever else in order to be able to get through that period, gave me like a poor credit record. What do they call it? Credit history. Credit history.
Yeah.
Credit history.
It's so weird.
So
it's like you don't have any credit history means you have poor credit history. Like they want you to go into debt so you can have good credit history.
Well, this was, I mean, when I got my mortgage, because I got a mortgage with Northern Rock, and it was 100% mortgage, no deposit, and they gave me $5,000 to take the mortgage. That's how heady those days were. So what could possibly go wrong?
Right.
I remember saying to the mortgage advisor, I was like, "Is this all right? I mean, we're lying about my income, and I'm getting a mortgage which I can't afford to possibly pay back."
And now it's like, let's do it all over again. What could go wrong now?
And the guy's like, "Oh, don't worry, you can sell it for double in a year or two. The housing market's never going to crash." So I was one of those ones. Anyway, but to get that mortgage, I couldn't. I failed the credit check, and the reason was I'd never had credit, so I had to go get like a contract mobile phone to get have a credit record, so I could then get the mortgage, which was ridiculous to me.
Yeah.
And after that, I had quite a poor. I didn't realize, but then when we were in a position again, had a young family and saved a little bit of money, and then I was gonna, go buy a house and put it down as a deposit and try and get back on the ladder, wearily get back on that ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And I was refused a mortgage because they said my credit history was so bad, even though I'd never really had credit. I just had this one really bad experience, which a lot of people had been through as well. And I couldn't be bothered with the options of, cleaning my credit history by going bankrupt and waiting 6 years, or working to improve my credit history and all that. I just think the whole thing felt so insidious to me.
Yeah.
And then the idea as well of people owning things but not really owning them. Like, you know, it's frowned upon to rent somewhere, but then if you're essentially just renting it from the bank, I mean, I suppose you are paying off for that asset eventually, which you're going to then own. But just the idea of, you know, living in something.
Quotes.
You're living in it. Yeah, you're living in like a building which the bank owns. You're living inside the bank, basically. I mean, I understand for so many people I mean, that's how, you know, we're renters, so that's how you end up owning your own property. But yeah, it really frustrated me with the legacy financial system. I just thought was so corrupt, and those decisions which were being made within Wall Street and within London had such a terrible impact on normal people like me who were just trying to get by and just wanted to, like, you know, we're working, we're trying to be productive citizens, and then all of a sudden we get this huge financial blow, which really has a negative impact on our lives. And I just thought that's corrupt. That shouldn't exist. Like, and I think as well, like a lot of people, they want to make the world a better place, but there's you know, they're disenfranchised. They think it's not possible. There's nothing they could possibly do which is actually going to have any sort of impact, you know. And even with this, where I get the apathy in representative democracy, they don't feel that their vote really counts for anything. Same shit usually happens because everything's so corrupt, and you get all this, like, you know, sense of just futility, like you can't do anything to improve society. And yeah, exactly, in a direct way. And then when you learn about Bitcoin, then, and you realize it's a form of direct action. Like, this is something you can do, which has which chips away at the power base of the legacy financial system, and then adds value to this new emerging, very powerful infrastructure, which is managed and decisions are happen through this great mechanism, this consensus mechanism thing, as opposed to being behind closed doors by a few incredibly rich people. So as a form of direct action, and then as giving hope that actually there's that great anarchist tagline that a better world is possible, you know, to not think that this is our lot and then we can't improve the world and humanity. And I think a lot of people, when they discover Bitcoin and they realize, whoa, we can build this planetary money which can't be attacked or taken away, and is sensitive resistant, has these amazing qualities. If we can do that, like, there's a lot of other stuff we could probably do to make this world a better place. And I think that's very inspiring for people. It was equally inspiring to me, and then it gave me a great sense of hope. And then it's just been a real pleasure then to be involved in Bitcoin at a time when, you know, you're able to make direct impact and contribute to the ecosystem, either through the open source projects or tinkering and you know, as an educator. And as that still exists, you know, we're still very small, and there's still plenty of things to be built and plenty of new ground to break. And I think the great thing about Bitcoin is we can do that now. You know, you can break. Like today, we were just talking just before we started about Synonym and how they've just done the first USD Tether transaction over Lightning, over a Lightning channel. They just broke a new ground. They've just done this thing. They've done the first one of these things, which probably there'll be, you know, trillions of these transactions which will happen over the next few years, and all these countries adopting Coin and Lightning Network, and they need a stable medium of exchange, and they've just done that first. So I remember when my first kind of like coming out to the Bitcoin community was I went to the Lightning Hack Day in Berlin, and there they had the bar, you know, the first bar to a very iconic, important bar, room 77 in Berlin, but they were doing kind of the first Lightning payments for, because it was very, very early on, for beer and for whatever else and for wine. And I was literally like picking drinks, like, I'm going to get the first, I think it's probably the first glass of red wine. I think I bought the first glass of red wine on Lightning, you know, like, and I'm doing all these things, and that feelings of doing something for the first time, which years from now will just be taken for granted. And it's just, I don't know, something about breaking new ground, which I really enjoy. And I like being part of that.
Yeah.
So
They told me about the Berlin one where he went and bought beer for the first time, using a Lightning, scanning a QR code at the bar. He said bar 77, I think it was called, right?
Yeah, room 77. That's
room
it.
77, yeah. It was pretty groundbreaking.
Who was it who told you that?
Fode Diop.
Oh yeah. No, it's that bar. So they the first Bitcoin phone wallet, mobile wallet, not Lightning mobile wallet, the first Bitcoin mobile wallet was made in that bar. Because they were fed up of taking their laptops to the bar, So it was very poetic that like all these firsts were happening with a lightning with lightning transactions as well. Very sadly closed during the COVID stuff, not because of COVID, because the guy who runs that, I think that entire area is gentrified, and he gets so much stick when he opens up the bar and all these raucous Bitcoiners starts yelling and screaming and partying too hard, as Bitcoiners have a tendency to do. So very sadly had to close that bar, but it should have been made into a museum.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's still great things coming out from the Berlin Bitcoin scene, like, you know, the stuff which Jeff Olmo does with the Lightning Hack Days and Lightning Conference and El Salvador, and yeah, great. So there's the impact of that bar and getting people into a meet space, man. Like it makes such a huge difference. I mean, we do all this stuff over the internet, but like I was in Istanbul at one of their hack days, and actually being in a meet space with other Bitcoin developers and other projects as well. Like I'm able to talk to people in these other projects and exchange ideas, and then you realize you're like all suffering in the same way. There's certain technical issues you're all having, but you have to be in that kind of meet space to kind of admit it to each other, and then you can sort of like, you know, move forward together.
Brainstorm.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Do you see that in the UK anywhere, like any local meetups that have the same type of drive towards Lightning adoption or even development? Like I know locally, I don't really find it very often in Jamaica at all. I find it in Miami when I'm in Florida, but do you see it in the UK or in London specifically or anywhere else? Wales?
UK is pretty poor. I mean, like Bitcoin Wales, I think they've got the biggest, that's in Cardiff, great meetup, by the way. You can Google Bitcoin Wales and find their meetup and attend. In fact, they're going to have the Bitcoin retreat in West Wales, so it's like a camping holiday retreat. They have a healthy meetup, you know, so they'll have like, you know, 30 to 50 people turning up, and you have a constant flow of like noobs coming in, and there's some OG types there as well, and so there is some good stuff going on in UK. London is diabolical. Like it always amazes me when I go to an event in London. You know, you'll go to like a Bit Devs and you'll have like a John Newbery talking or something, and there'll be like 7 people in the room, and you're like people know about this event which is happening in this city, which is like one of the financial capitals of the whole world. Why isn't there you down the street to listen to these people talking?
Wow.
So I find it very frustrating when I go to London. But then Advancing Bitcoin, that was in London, and that had a lot of people. But it's saying a lot of the people coming from all over the world and all over Europe, and it wasn't just London's. I don't know what's going on there.
Interesting.
Maybe I'm just going in the right places.
Or maybe it's just that everybody's so, you know, they're dedicated or invested in the traditional financial system in London that they don't want to, you know, it's against their best interest to go learn something new like Bitcoin, you know, the innovator's dilemma. It'll destroy what they're doing today.
That's very likely, yeah, because they're age-old imperialist financial institutions. Like, why would they possibly support? And there'd be a culture of not supporting and not approving of this new financial technology, which strips their power away. I think my favorite London Bitcoin is Bitcoin Black Cabbie. So it's literally like a black cabbie guy in London with his cab driving around London, and he's just like, he's proper Cockney geezer, and he's just like, oh, as people get in his cab, he's just onboarding them.
Really? And, while they're driving to their destination?
While he's driving around London, he's just one at a time onboarding them, and he's so good. He's just exactly what you want from a cabbie. It's brilliant. So he's probably my favorite Bitcoin. But no, we have great developers, like, you know, we have the Adam Backs and the Johnny, and you know, we have some incredible developers in UK, but they tend not to kind of like meet up so much, and the meetup scene's not great. The conference scene's not great. Advancing Bitcoin, as I said, is great. It's nothing like in the Berliners. They've got a really good scene. The Germans have got a really good scene there. In fact, if you look at the node maps, the Germans have got, I think they've got the lion's share when it comes to Bitcoin nodes. I think for a lot of the time that they beat the US for Bitcoin nodes.
Oh, wow.
I know that node map's like, you know, probably triple or whatever, and it's not very accurate, but it gives you some idea of where nodes are.
Who knows what's behind Tor as well? You can't see, right?
Exactly, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So what do you think Bitcoin would be able to fix? I mean, there's not much to fix in the UK, to be honest. You guys are kind of well down the road of either ruin or stagnant in terms of financial stuff. But I always ask it for different countries. What do you think Bitcoin could impact or change within the everyday, you know, Brit's life?
Well, I'm obviously, in here now, and since Brexit, there's been like the Scottish independent movement has got a lot more traction, because the big argument against Scottish independence when they had their referendum was that the UK would remain in the EU, and if Scotland left, they would then be effectively leaving the EU. So that was the big swaying vote. Obviously, that's changed now. So the Scottish Independence Party's got a lot much more momentum behind it. And then equally in Wales, the independence movement here is getting more weight behind it too. We talk about the Bank of England. We're not talking about the Bank of the UK. We're talking about Bank of England. No, right. I'm in Wales. I'm not in England. So the decisions which are made to benefit the UK, quote unquote UK, are often made to benefit England,
right?
Rather than the Union. And I think that's quite frustrating for Scotland, Wales, and Ireland. And so anyway, the it's kind of interesting as well, because I hate things like nationalism, because obviously they lead to kind of far right mentality and this idea of superiority over other people, and that some people can't come into your country or whatever. But I think when you have like a kind of historically oppressed countries, I think their form of sort of nationalism, or kind of like the identity which it's not an exclusive identity, it's quite an inclusive identity, where they don't care. It's not about borders and strengthening borders. It's more about just empowering themselves and being able to make their own decisions over their own lives. Well, anyway, the Welsh independence movement is doing very well. And one of the topics which is talked about quite often is, what would we do about money? So if we left the UK, would we continue to use the British pound, or would we use something else? And this is an argument which I've been thinking about for a while. And it's that if you have all these countries with central banks exploring what are they called? CBDCs? I always forget the name. Pardon?
CBDCs?
CBDCs. Exploring all these CBDs. And then it makes sense that countries which don't have central banks will also explore digitally native currency. That's what I like to call it. Digitally native, sovereign digitally native currency, which isn't reliant upon a central bank. And then steps in Bitcoin and this amazing tool set which we built, things like Liquid and Lightning and whatever else, and smart contracting. And so in Wales, I think like one of the best things Wales could do is come up with a Welsh pound, peg it to like, the pound and the euro, maybe the USD as well, and reach some sort of like, average or whatever, I don't know. And do it in a way which is decentralized enough. So maybe my concept would be to have like a federated vault, and then the federation is the different regions or counties of Wales. They're all part of a multi-sig which control this federated vault. And then you put Bitcoin in the federated vault, you put £100 worth of Bitcoin in, you get £100 Welsh pounds out. And then it will use that MakerDAO arbitrage mechanism to keep the peg. And then that way, it can float out because the problem is, as soon as you and if you don't have centralized control of a stable currency, and then as soon as you stick out in the world, if it hasn't got some sort of like mechanism to keep the peg, then it'll someone will start tweeting about it, and then you'll just get all the crazy price swings which you have with currencies.
Stabilizes the currency value to the pound, but it's on top of Bitcoin.
Yeah, so it'd be like so basically it's a Bitcoin vault built on something like Liquid, and then it spits out basically a Liquid token, I suppose, a Welsh pound. But then what's cool about that is you could have Lightning Network on top of it. So all the Lightning infrastructure which we've been building for the past few years, we could have the Welsh pound. You could just send the Welsh pound over Lightning. And I think you could roll that out. And actually, I was thinking, rather than this being something which is built after independence, I actually think for countries which are trying to shake off, the colonial yoke, if it's the transfer of power from the federation, but if you can do that in such a way that the independence movement is the federation, and so say for example, if we built the Welsh pound now, and it was just kind of like a cultural community coin which people could use, cafes could use, shops could use, they would use it. If it was like, if you could like go out back into the value which they put in, sort of thing, there's some mechanism for that. People would use it, just as they used it in Bristol. They had the Bristol pound quite a long time ago. That wasn't based on any technology. Yeah, and it was very successful just because people, and I think this is something a lot of people in Europe experienced with the euro. Like people feel real identity in their currency, and they want their currency to kind of represent them in some way, and represent their country in some way. That can go quite badly, obviously, because you end up with currency wars and stuff, and it can end up spilling into real war. But if you're just like creating a stable coin, if you're calling it the Welsh pound, and if you could roll, I actually think it could be something which drives independence, because you want to do it in such a way that it's like corrupt resistant, so you can't corrupt it, but then also censorship resistance, in that the Bank of England, if it gets too big, by the time it gets too big, the Bank of England or the UK government can't say, you need to shut this thing down, you've created your own money, blah, blah, blah. Like, have it decentralized and federated enough that couldn't possibly happen. And then also, like, culturally, the people who are using it, they wouldn't let that happen either. And then I think it could become like a, so like, look at El Salvador, for example. I think one of the best things El Salvador could do is basically build the same thing, the El Salvador dollar, and just shake off the USD. Like,
they would peg to the US dollar for that, of course, since they're already
yeah,
US
yeah, they could,
yeah.
they could do that, or they could peg it to a bunch of things, for maybe for stability, like some assets or some other fiat or whatever.
Are there volcano bonds that should be pretty stable if they do that right?
Yeah, exactly. The best thing they could do in El Salvador is everyone's getting used to Lightning Network and paying with Lightning, but they don't like the price fluctuations. So if in their wallets now they can use the El Salvador dollar, and it's stable, it's similar to USD, or maybe even more stable, and doesn't involve a central bank, and it's federated enough that no one can directly corrupt it. I mean, there is maybe perhaps that in the federation you would have 60% local government, and then you would have 40% private industry who are part of the because they have a vested interest in the success of this local currency. I think that's the most important. And I also I think we're saying off air about the stability thing. Like, in order for Bitcoin, in my mind, obviously eventually we'll all just use Bitcoin to be super stable, because it'll have all the world's liquidity in it, and it'll be very hard to move the price of Bitcoin.
Right.
But I kind of feel like in order to get there, it needs to be stable. So like, in order for everyone to put their money into Bitcoin, it needs to be stable. But then, or maybe not. I mean, people will speculate on it, of course. But I think by having these mechanisms for having stable coins on top of Bitcoin, it'll pull loads of liquidity in, and then eventually it'll unravel itself, because the Bitcoin would have literally so much liquidity in it that it would become stable itself, and everyone will say, well, why were you using this stable coin thing? We can just,
at that point,
you can just use Bitcoin directly.
So the stable coins are bootstrapping the stability of Bitcoin. That'd be
cool
that way. So I'm going to ask you my favorite question, which is, because I'm always stalking what you're doing. What are you working on right now? I've seen Where 39, which I love. I've actually found the words for my country that I always land in the airport. I won't say them out loud. No one needs to know where I'm landing, but I have my 4 words. But I also see LNURL, POS, the vending machine. What's like your favorite project you're working on right now?
I mean, the thing which is probably LNBits. So from all the hardware stuff which I did, LNBits kind of grew from that. Like, there was a bunch of things like problems I kept kind of bumping into, like having to, if you make a version, say if I make a version of my point of sale, I have to make like an LND version, a C Lightning version, an Eclair version, an OpenOde version. So it makes sense to have like a middleware piece of software. And then also, like in Room 77, they had one of my point of sale projects. That's the M5 stack, yeah. But that makes a really nice point of sale. They've actually discontinued these, manufacturing them, but I was in contact with M5, which is kind of annoying, because I've released like a LMPOS version of the M5 stack, that the new version, I updated it, but now you can't actually buy the hardware. It's a shame, because they have these great like charging ports you can put them in. In fact, there's one on the wall over here which I can put it in. There we go. Nice. Sit there and charge. It's pretty good for a bar. You can just, it charges and you can take it off and use it. Anyway, they're making a new one, because you can take the faces off them, so you can take like this part off. Oh, there we go. This bit here off here, and like you can change it, customize it over. Yeah, I've said, can I just have like a simple keypad with an NFC reader underneath it, and then that way we can do like tap and pay, Lightning payments, and then it won't have as many buttons. It'd be, it look a bit slicker, a bit more, like a keypad.
Yeah, like a scientific calculator. I think
that's an exciting. So like with the POS, when I made that, the company who manufacture the microcontrollers, which is that's the microcontroller on its own, which I was using, and then plugging a keypad into it, they could see that we had all these likes and all these shares on Twitter and whatever. So I get in contact with them and I say, can we have like a specific easy piece of hardware which people can use? And then they built this little hat thing now. So you've got like the microcontroller, and you've also got, you know, you can just plug it into this little hat, and then you don't have to do anything with it makes it like in a nice little unit. And then you can, someone in the community, Black Coffee, Bitcoin Black Coffee, one of Bitcoin, like a 3D printer guy, he developed a really nice case for it.
Yeah.
So like there's all these people contributing into it. So yeah, LNBits is probably you know, the thing I spend most of my time on. But then I also really like the hardware because it's very rewarding. And people get quite inspired by it, you know, when you take something out of the screen, and I don't know, like you talk
Real
about
life
those Andreas
space.
and absolutely, and you, like this Andreas Antonopoulos used to do his talks on like a future IoT and all these devices sending micro value transactions there. And when you play around with these tiny little microcontrollers and you start sending Bitcoin over Lightning and you're getting things to turn on, then that all becomes quite exciting. So actually what I'm working on right now, but if you ever remember, but I used a 12-volt battery and a windscreen motor. And then this is one of my shows, which I did like a panel show thing, and I had this slappy thing attached to it. And then people could pay a QR code, and it was like slap me in the face while I was talking. So if they didn't like what I was saying, they could pay to slap me. There's a really good GIF of it somewhere. I had a smoke machine on as well. So I was like, there were 2 QR codes. In fact, there were 3 QR codes. One was to pay to turn the smoke machine on, and the other one was to slap me. And then the middle one would like accumulate all the coins, and then you could pull the coins out of it as a faucet. So that was cool. So I'm working on that right now. But yeah, LNBits is just so, you know, like when you've got like a piece of software which you can easily extend the functionality of through an extension, you could just let your mind wander, and you're like, oh, do you know what would be cool if I made blah, blah, blah. And then you just make like some extension.
I automatically just thought virtual carny a while ago. Like you just have a bunch of screens and people are doing weird things, and as you LN pay each one, they just do something like it slaps them in the face or dunks this guy in a tank or somebody tells a joke.
I wanted it like a panel, you know, like a panel thing. Like I wanted to go like because I had one of these electrocution things, you know, toys, and I thought you could wire us all up on a panel. And then if you didn't like someone or whatever, or for fun, I suppose you could just simply pay and then electrocute trying to do their panel, and they're like trying to talk, but they keep getting these little shocks coming through. I did actually think I might do all of this. I might do a YouTube live stream and then have this slapping machine, but then I'm just gonna like cover a bunch of topics which sometimes annoys people, and I talk about eating veggies is good, and then see if anyone slaps me. And then
you get a lot of carnies slapping you on that one. Carnivores.
I like the 21 million cap will one day be breached.
Oh geez.
All that shit. Yeah, all the good stuff. So I was Keynes was a genius.
Oh man, just asking for it.
Yeah. But I thought, I could get some money, and I thought what I could do is I could have I thought about it again an extension. So basically, I'll pay, but then the option for it to accumulate in value. So every time you pay it, the next time increases by like X%. So the next time it increases by 5%. That LN pay, so you can pay it and then you pay it, and it just keeps going up in value. So you can have something like that, and then it's like, even though he's saying that Keynes is genius, do you really want to pay to slap him? It's going to cost you some money,
right?
When he was talking about veggies,
it's like the value of the slap has gone up in price over the free market.
I love goofy stuff like that. So much fun. They're like a sweep machine which you retrofit to accept Bitcoin, an arcade machine, because it's stupid, but actually it's fascinating to be able to like do a live stream video, someone pay in like a completely anonymous way, me, a micro transaction as well, like a touch, a few pennies or fraction of a penny, and then trigger an event in my, real world, trigger a thing to actually to happen, like a smoke machine or a slapping machine. That's pretty powerful. Like,
and just for the techies listening, right? It's as basic as them paying a LN URL or anything else that they want to pay. Even an on-chain address, and whenever you get that receipt, that acknowledgement of the transaction, it'll use an Arduino code, maybe with a microcontroller that just activates something, whatever you want it to activate.
That's 100% it. So like my basics generic setup, which I'm constantly using and reusing, you got to see. So basically, I've got an ESP, like a £2 ESP32, a relay. So that's just an electronic switch. You've got 3 wires coming from the ESP32. Which powers the relay, and then there's a signal wire. So you just say, high, this GPIO to be high. When it's high, it switches this on, which then connects the battery to the motor around and slaps me in the face.
Awesome.
You can do it for anything. You can turn lights on. You can do it for anything. You can pay, and then it just opens a door or something. Or so for like paywalling real world stuff, it's pretty cool, pretty fun, interesting. So LNBits is the probably my love at the moment. It's the thing which I'm most wrapped up in. I do sometimes miss the hardware, which I'm trying to do some of it now, but hopefully I'll get the slapping machine ready. I like going to these conferences, and they, when you're in when you're going through baggage control and they ask you to open it, they say any electronics to declare, and I just open up my bag. It's this bag of like fucking weird shit, like
they give you that look like everywhere. What do you do?
They're like, what's wrong with you?
I get it all
Why
the time.
Are you an idiot? And they were still my screwdrivers as well. You can't take that on the plane. I'm like, no, not again. In fact, I'm getting good at like smuggling screwdrivers. If you put them in the side of the bag, where sometimes you have like the metal frame of the bag. If you put it on the very side, like they just assume it's part of the bag. If you put it in the middle, then it's too obvious.
It also works in your toiletry bag. If you put it in there, they just think it's like a toothpick or something small like that too.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I think it's just like an electric toothbrush.
Yep.
Toiletry bag. I'm going to try that. I'm going to do that as well then. Fill my toiletry bag full of electronics.
There you go. Why did they have so many toothbrushes? What's going on there?
It's a big toiletry bag.
Well, I gotta say, I love LNBits. I use it all the time. All the faucets, even the one for the UK, is going to be on LNBits. I know you're still doing custodial, like you're hosting a server for it. What's the best way to do it non-custodial? I've tried that before, but I haven't really figured it out yet.
Yeah, I mean, so it's a demo server, so we encourage people not to use it for because one day we'll just steal your money. So we encourage people not to use it, the demo server. But I mean, people can use the demo server, but I mean, they're not supposed to. But so that's interesting actually. You can either do like a one-click install on a Raspberry Blitz or an Umbrella, but quite often because we're still in beta, so like we're bringing out new releases quite often. And we're not out of beta yet, so we always encourage people just to pull the latest version of LNBits, which is running, and use that. But with Blitz and Umbrella, they kind of need a release or a tag to pin to.
Yeah.
So I've got install guides. If you go to the LNBits YouTube, there's like a 25-minute tutorial, and it's a live tutorial where I set up a VPS, a domain. I think I do it all in an anon way as well. So a VPS, a domain, C Lightning on the VPS, like a prune C Lightning. But I go through it in stages. So like first the LNBits, and I connect it to like LNT Export, I think, as a funding source, and then give it a domain and a style certificate. And that's like the first 8 minutes or something. And it's live too. So that's literally how long it takes to get it up and running. And you could connect it to LNT Export, and it works very, very well. Or you could connect it to the LNBits demo server if you want. And then I go on to then add a C Lightning node and then plug it into the C Lightning node. Because this is a great plugin which Fulljoy made for C Lightning called Trusted Coin, and it's not very self-sovereign. You get block data from like a dozen different sources instead of using a Bitcoin blockchain. But it just means that if you're hosting it in the cloud for a VPS, it doesn't cost you a fortune in data fees. So that's kind of nice. We use it for the back end of LNBits.com, and it works well. So anyway, there's that. There's just doing it yourself on a VPS. But also we've been working on like a cluster, an LNBits cluster. So hopefully soon you'll be able to go to LNBits.com, put in like a desired subdomain, and then it will just spin up a clean LNBits with that subdomain. Which often is like all people really want. They're using it in a cafe or something, or they want to use it for an event or whatever, and they just want to spin up an LNBits, and then that'll just kind of be kind of a pay-as-you-go, easy spin up an LNBits instance, and it'd be cheap as well. Because it's we can get quite a lot. We realize we can get quite a lot of these LNBits as instances in our cluster. So and it could be kind of a nice way to fund some development as well. But and also like useful for people, because a lot of people, they'll have like their Raspberry Blitz on tour, and then they'll just need a ClearNet because they want to play around with LNURL stuff.
That's always the problem. The Tor is a problem, right? You can't really, like, no one can just really scan a faucet or LNURL over Tor if they don't have a Tor enabled wallet.
Just a pain in the ass. Trying to explain that to people. You just download all blah 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 blah.
Do you have Samurai?
And this is the argument for offers, isn't it? Ultimately, like, because then you'll be able to do a lot of that stuff just, on the actual Lightning protocol, as opposed to having to have this HTTP server in the middle.
Yeah, and that's why I see Lightning, because you can just turn on experimental offers and bam, you're good to go. Yeah,
absolutely. But then I don't think it's not going to replace LNURL, because it's still very useful. Sometimes having like the POS thing, like having that HTTP server there to deliver a decrypted pin once the payment has gone through. That's possible with it's easy to do with LNURL with offers, as you still do with offers, I suppose. So there's I think it's like some people kind of like frame this argument like it's offers or LNURL, and I'm like, to me they're just kind of two different technologies you can use depending on what you want to use it for. I'll use offers as soon as it's more readily implemented, 100%. But I'll still probably continue to use LNURL as well. So
yeah. And I keep on thinking at the end of the day, the end user, like, the person buying or selling coffee or in a coffee shop trying to run it, they're not going to care if it's offers or LNURL or whatever, just want it to work without, exposing themselves. So hopefully we get there soon.
Yeah, this is always the problem, isn't it? Because it's this layers of complexity when you're developing protocol-y stuff, and you try to find the best ways of. I mean, a lot of this stuff in other technologies is just being kind of done in a closed way, which we haven't really been exposed to it because no one's really been using the technology. But we're all kind of like learning on the job and building the technology while it's functional and being used out there in the real world. And there's this great sense of urgency. The world keeps sort of trying to adopt Bitcoin and Lightning payments, and then all this stuff kind of still needs to get built out. It's pretty cool though. Like on the meat space topic, there's this hackathon called Bolt Fun, which is happening right now by the Bitcoin Bolt Fun. Yeah, it's by the. This is crazy about Bitcoin at the moment. There's so many different things going on. There's so many different projects. It's so hard to keep up with them all. But yeah, I just kind of like found out about it kind of late on. But Bolt Fun, and it's by the Bitcoin design community.
Okay. I know them.
They're involved in setting this thing up. Yeah, and it's like a week-long hackathon, trying to encourage people to build some stuff and like build some, communicate with each other. But anyway, we were talking. So I was talking with, Albi? Albi? Mm-hmm. It's like a desktop. It's like a desktop Lightning wallet. It's pretty cool. It's kind of like Joule, like a more extended version of Joule. Okay. Albi. I was talking to the lead developer of that, Boomi, and we were both saying that, like with LNURL Pay, if you could have a way of checking that the payments happened, you could use LNURL Pay in loads of interesting ways. Like you could use it to fund stuff. So like, for example, I could have ClearNet at my LNBits, LNBits running on a demo server running. You could take an LNURL Pay made on anywhere, made on your node, made on a Wallet Satoshi or OpenNode or whatever. Just make an LNURL Pay wherever. You take that LNURL Pay, you could give it to LNBits, and then LNBits will just use that to fetch invoices. So you could use it as a way of pulling invoices. And because it's LNURL Pay, you can then set the variables in wherever you've generated the LNURL Pay. Actually, we're thinking, because obviously you got the Lightning address, which is like a more human readable version, has an LNURL Pay behind it.
The Lightning address much better, yeah.
People like that, man. Like more and more people are like adopting this Lightning address, even though it's basically just an email address with the LNURL Pay, which references an LNURL Pay.
Yeah.
But the only problem is with LNURL Pay, you can't, if once a payment's been made, you can't check to see if the payment's been made. So if you have like a service which isn't the LNURL server, you can't check to see if the LNURL has been paid. So it's funny because I thought this was just an issue I was having. But then when I went on this Bolt Fun thing, there's loads of other projects. There's a guy who went on there actually, and he was talking about, he wanted to make like a really simple shop for accepting Lightning payments. So you could literally host it on like a GitHub.io.webs and then use some cloud database thing like Firebase or something. And then for funding, he thought you could have a couple of different options for funding sources, but one of them could be literally just give it a Lightning address. And then when people make payments for your products, they're just paying that Lightning address. But then he was running into that site
that they paid, and
exactly, yeah. So he was running into the same issue. Like, how do you then just verify that that payment's actually been made or a payment's been made? So that was cool because it's like all these people who are having this, they're trying to use LNURL in a way which it's not kind of been thought of that people would use it in. It's like a new innovative way of using this technology, and everyone's having the same kind of growing pain and hitting the same problems. And then the LNURL community are kind of kicking back on it and saying, well, you shouldn't be using the technology like that. And then people are like, well, we kind of want to. So can we facilitate that in some way? Yeah, so it's kind of interesting seeing that evolve and develop. And then there's some of the LNURL people are saying that we should just have like a standard API, which all nodes could just, like a library, they could just support this standard API, and then it communicates with their own API. LNBits kind of does that, but it would be nice to like abstract it out, just like a simple library, collection of libraries.
Like a protocol.
Install this simple, protocol, the simple API. I want to call it Conduct because no one's using the name Conduct, and it's such an obviously good name when it comes to Lightning, because it's like, it's conducting electricity, but it's also conducting business. Conducting business,
orchestra,
conduct, orchestra. So it's just a really nice word. So I thought the Conduct protocol.
Like it.
But it's a good argument. There's a reason a lot of people use LNBits, and it's actually the thing which annoyed me the most when I was developing these things like this point of sale. And you could do it. You could abstract it out into this very simple, standardized API, which, if you've got an LND, you can just install Conduct, and then boom, now you've got all this, API access. And it's standard. You can use it on C-Lite, you can use it on, anyway, that would be cool. And then for that, you could just if you had that shop thing, the Rohan shop thing, you could then just give it your Conduct credentials, I suppose, like be giving it your LNBits credentials, and it doesn't matter what's underneath the Conduct thing. So one of my favorite things you can do with LNBits, which no one else seems to care about, because it's kind of takes it out from. So with LNBits, because it sits on top of a funding source, I made because early on, if you wanted to do a self-payment, an LN, you couldn't do a self-payment. You couldn't pay your own node, and you couldn't do it in C Lightning as well. I think you can do it now in LND, actually, in C Lightning. So what we do in LNBits is, to get around that issue, is it would just like handle the payment internally, and then make it look like it was happening on the node layer. So what I did is I've made a fake funding source. So you can put the fake funding source under LNBits. Then you generate, so if I generate an invoice from my wallet in LNBits, and you're on the same LNBits install, and you've also got a wallet, if I generate an invoice, if you pay it, that payment just happens internally. So it doesn't matter that the node's fake. All the node is doing is like creating some crypto things, so to make the Lightning invoices unique enough that no other install could possibly try paying it or anything. But what it means is you can take the software which is developed for sitting on top of Bitcoin and Lightning, you can take it, detach it completely, and just use it for internal invoicing and payment between wallets, which is not very sexy or appealing to Bitcoiners, I know, but it means that all that hardening which happens by it being a piece of Bitcoin payment software, and all the extensions for all things you could do, like the jukebox extension, the point of sale extension, the offline shop extension, the LNURL stuff, the hardware which plugs into it, the ATMs, the vending machines you can plug into it as well. That will all still work. So you could take an LNBits, you could refactor it a little bit, change some of the naming in it, and then you could have it in like a school, and then the school could have their own school token. And it's all centralized, and it's just this LNBits system with this fake funding source, and it's in the, and basically the parents, they pay for school tokens. The kids can use the school tokens in the canteen for food. They can use it at the vending machine. They can use it for some experiences. But what you're getting is, even though they're not directly using Bitcoin, they're engaging with the sort of financial and payment system which they're going to engage with in the future. They're dealing with an accounts-based system, which is kind of like a banking account or online banking account. So they're having to they can see budgets and payments, and can see where the money's going and everything. And then I mean, in the UK we have that already. Like, kids have these fobs, and they go into school, they pay for their food with their fobs at the canteen, and you could actually use LNBits like that, and you could just mint these LNURL withdrawals, put them on an NFC, and they could use those in the canteen just as well. It would work. And anyway, so I'm actually quite excited about the idea, because you'd be giving
this is making total sense to me. This is making total sense, because even in college we had the same thing. For if I wanted to go to get food from Chartwell's, which was the canteen, you had points on your card you could just scan, and that could easily just be this system instead. And kids will be learning from high school, not just college, on how to not only manage their money, but how to conduct themselves in this new digital age that adults don't even know how to do right now. This is amazing. Like, I feel like this is a great learning
Yeah.
tool.
And they could build extensions too. Like the kids could actually extend the software if they really
Create
wanted
projects,
to.
hackathons in school on whatever they want without touching the actual money, because you're using their own token that's built on top of the
for financial
node.
literacy. And actually, I mean, so like this, you know, I made ages ago, I made like a WooCommerce workflow where you can buy digital product from WooCommerce, and then that digital product, basically you get emailed an LNURL withdraw. So you could, so a parent could pay for £10 worth of school token, and they get an LNURL withdraw email to them, and that's £10 worth of school token they can scan with their wallet, and the kids can then use in school. So that would work with it as well. But yeah, financial literacy, applied maths, like it takes so many educational and that's just school, like you say, the universities, a music festival. It's almost like an honest shitcoin, like private. Do you know what I mean? Like a private, centralized, honest. Like it's not trying to be a cryptocurrency or anything. It's just use this payment server as a standalone payment server for this internal payment network thing. And going back to just like you're saying with the educational thing, I think they're missing it. They're missing a trick, because like kids would be using it, and even by just passively, even if they're not actively trying to understand it, they will be using it, and they'll be learning how to engage with these payments and micropayments. And like the idea of having projects in school, like and be able to develop extensions as well, that'd be great.
What shitcoin should have been. That's what it says.
That's little Joey coin. Do you remember Andreas's little Joey coin? Little Joey will be in the playground. He'll have little Joey coin.
Yeah, little Joey and his friend's coin.
We've got a really good extension on LNBits called Jukebox, the Jukebox extension. And you can connect LNBits to your Spotify account, and then you can just give it access. So you say, yes, you can access these playlists, and you can play them on this device. And then there's like a front end page, and people just pick a song from the playlists you selected. And then when they pay for it, it then just starts playing on the song. It starts playing on the device in which you selected.
You could hook this up to like a speaker in a bar, and people could just pay jukeboxes through a QR code on their tables.
That's it, man. That's it. That's the idea. Like streaming sats. You know, that bar in El Salvador. Like, why aren't people paying for to play music in the jukebox? But again, though, like when you had coins and when you had like small amounts of money which you could make payments with before, you know, people started to try and get rid of physical cash. Jukeboxes, vending machines, there's all these like tipping. There's all these things which cash was really useful for. Which once you get rid of cash, like you can no longer do. I suppose that's why the argument behind these CBDs. Enemies.
Enemies, exactly. They're watching. What do you want to tell them about Bitcoin, about the UK, about yourself?
Just to get involved. Like, we just need people making stuff, running stuff and testing stuff. Just get involved. Like, the best form of direct action and actually making a difference. I mean, obviously you can just buy Bitcoin and hold it, whatever you want to do with this, you know, the technology. It's whatever you want to do with it. But just, if you can, just try and get involved in some of these great open source projects which are out there. You know, run the software, play with it, join the Telegram groups, get engaged with the communities, suggest ideas, debug, you know, learn Git. That's something which I think should be taught in schools, is how to use Git. It's such a great way of, you know, managing projects, and it's very empowering because you know how to like make a contribution in a way which people are going to appreciate for these projects. But as long as you know, I find that the whole I don't know whether it will always be this way, but I find that people are so welcoming in the Bitcoin development community because they're even if like noobs, you know, have just started spinning up a piece of software. We get on LNBits all the time on the Telegram group. There's somebody coming in and they're asking all these really basic questions which we've answered like 1,000 times before, but we're just psyched they're like using the software, and then once they've used it for a little while, they might come up with some great idea which we can, you know, implement or something. So yeah, just get involved, and you know, real world events, if you can get to a hack day or a conference or a meetup, like get in that meet space, exchange ideas. You know, we all need to it's like the wartime. It's a wartime effort, isn't it? You know, like we're going to war against this big massive legacy financial system. all hands on deck, pile in, get your hands working. We need you. Sort of like,
Yeah,
like everyone get
you.
involved. It's not what Bitcoin can do for you, it's what you can do for Bitcoin. Like, what can you do for Bitcoin? How can you make it better? It can be education, it can be explaining it to people, it can be writing about it, talking about it, but also building and running stuff. And just get involved.
Very true.
And I suppose by listening to your podcast, they're already involved. So yeah, carry on, being great and being part of a great community.
Yeah, same with yours. And watching you build all these things, that's definitely inspiring. So hopefully it inspires people to keep building too. Builders are so important right now, and I don't think we have enough of them. So you keep building.
No, I mean we don't. I mean this is what you guys are trying to do with the open access stuff as well, isn't it? You're just trying to like help keep these builders, like give them the time and the space in which they need to be able to build stuff.
Yeah.
Because so much of it's voluntary, it's like LNBits, for example, that's all just been done by volunteers. Like, we're just all hobbyists, just tinkering around, people coming in, giving ideas. And so yeah, no, I mean, that's a great way of contributing as well. It's just offering support, like figuring out ways of helping these developers get paid as well, so they can work on LNBits. So they can work on LNBits, they can work on Lightning projects.
Or LNBits too. I mean, that's an open
LNBits
source.
LNBits on the mind, right? It's on the tip of my tongue at all times.
So tell people where to reach you. Tell them where they can find you online.
All right, yeah. So on Twitter, I think I'm Ben Arc on Twitter. And then on GitHub, ArcBTC, I think Ben Arc BTC. I always forget what I am on GitHub. If you go on, I used to do a lot more video tutorials and things and educational things, but if you go to the YouTube, if you go to World Crypto Network and then you go to playlists, deep way down there's a playlist called BTC IoT, and I've got like 20 odd workshops on there, tutorials on how to do things like with hardware. We set up a new channel actually called MakerBits on YouTube, and we didn't do our research though. There is some like project which some kids were doing on there, so you might bump into that. But if you start MakerBits Bitcoin, you probably should get it. But we're starting to re-release a lot of the tutorial stuff, for the things like the point of sale and things on there. And there's a couple of other contributors on there as well, which is nice. It's not just me anymore. Nice. Other people are making videos as well, which is great. So actually, check out the MakerBits channel, because we are going to start populating that with a lot of videos. And then the LNBits YouTube channel as well. I do like a very small overview of all the extensions, and then I've got like tutorials on how to set it up and everything. And then we've got like a kind of new version of LNBits, which is really interesting. It's a Go version, and it's very experimental. So yeah, it's very experimental. So unless you really know what you're doing, don't just use the original Python version. But we're really looking forward to like playing with it and building it out and building things on top of it, because you end up with you get all the benefits from being written in Go. So we've got a couple of tutorials kind of that works in our extension framework, and that works. But at the moment, it just serves to confuse people, because they're like, what do I install? Do I install this Infinity one, or do I install this Legend, which is the Python version? And we just say, look, just focus on the Python version for now. We're going to get that out beta, build it out properly, so the core is locked down, and you've got like a UI like WordPress for pulling in plugins and stuff. Then we're going to really focus on this Go version and make it really functional and usable for people, because it makes it really easy to kind of fabricate extensions and things. So it would be great, as again, like we were saying, for school. Like for school kids could make an extension just by filling out this config file. So
have you because I know you guys have a one-click install for Umbro for LNBits, but have you looked at Start9 yet for the embassy to do a one-click install there?
I did look. I was on Start9. I was looking at all the applications and stuff it supports. Is it kind of like Voltage? Do you have a similar system to Voltage? Or
no, it's much more like Umbro than Voltage.
Like, so it's a node software.
It's node software, yeah. Except it's not just the Docker Compose container. It's like an entire operating system they built off of Raspberry, I think. No, the Raspbian OS. And they just made their own embassy on top of it. I actually packaged services for them. I just finished packaging Mempool to drop on top of that one-click install. So I'm thinking I might be packaging LNBits if you haven't done it yet, and see if it can work on.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Yeah, I don't like. I mean, Docker. Some people love Docker, and I understand the modularity of Docker and why it's useful. But I think for people who want to kind of get in and sometimes fiddle with things and change things, like Docker could be kind of annoying. So I love Umbrel. I think it's a great project. It's on board a lot of people, but I do like it if you can kind of get into the software as well. But yeah, start 9. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
that'd be great.
And we have C Lightning. We don't just have LND, so we can do all kind of cool extensions on C Lightning with LNBits too.
Yeah, that's nice. I wanted to yeah, I need to look at that. So I can put that. I got some Raspberry Blitzes. I keep doing it as well. It's such a good name, Raspberry Blitz, isn't it?
I know, right?
I got some Raspberry Pis. I guess it's muscle memory because every time I say Raspberry, there's usually a, rather than a pi or a Bian on the end, there's a Blitz. Raspberry Pis. I've got a few Raspberry Pis, so I could maybe spin one up and check it out. It'd be cool.
Yeah, that's a scarce asset now, by the way. I don't know where you can buy that anymore.
You know why, don't you? It's knobheads like me buying loads of them and putting them in drawers, not using them. Like, you know, every time I go to like a tinker or a Bitcoiner's house, they've got a pile of Raspberry Pis they're not using.
I'm you got to show you my list of my. Can you see this? Is it like?
Oh, what are they all Raspberry Pis?
Raspberry Pis lined off. I have to like put stickers, like stickies on them, so I know which one's which. Because I have like 6 of them lined up on the window. I'm just.
Are they all different? Are they nodes or are they all different projects? Like, is there like a?
They're all different projects. Like I have the Embassy, I have an Umbrel, I have a Raspberry Blitz. This big one over here is Ronin Dojo. I have a MyNode. I've been just everything that comes out, I just tinker with it.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? They used to manufacture this in Wales, by the way. All those things on your shelf right now are probably built in Wales.
Wow.
But we lost that post Brexit, so. Britain. And this is actually, I mean, we didn't really cover UK. I mean, I'll quickly onto it, but UK now is becoming something of a nightmare for Bitcoin companies. I know a couple of companies who registered here, you know, a few years ago when basically it was ambiguous. So it was kind of cool to set up here because it was so loose. But then post Brexit now, they've made these really kind of strict regulations and rules, and they're being put through the mill. You know, they're like targeted from HMRC when they do have to do their tax returns. Everything's got to be accounted, like really everything's got to be accounted for. As companies, they're targeted. We've recently had all that crazy ATM legislation, so all the ATMs around the country
what the hell was that about? Yeah, that's ridiculous. Like they're not it's just such a shame, man. They're not banning Bitcoin, but they're going to ban the ATMs. That doesn't make any sense at all.
We're like the kings of bureaucracy. We have the biggest tax legislation in the whole world. It's like hundreds of thousands of pages, literally the biggest tax legislation, because we're old, we're slow, and we're bureaucratic. And people think that like the EU prevented us from streamlining and becoming more efficient, but it's far from it. Like the EU, I think there was an example where there was some reform on cabbages, cabbage farming, and they sent this like 1-page document to all the EU countries to look over and say, yeah, do you agree that this is correct legislation for cabbage farming? And I think the UK sent back a 50-page document of revisions they wanted and things added they wanted, and the rest of the EU were like, God, you guys, when are you going to leave? And then we did, and now we're just going to destroy ourselves with paperwork.
Oh my God.
So yeah, so UK is pretty bad for setting up Bitcoin businesses. It's not very Bitcoin friendly at the moment, which is a great shame. We've still got
the domino falls and Wales separates, then it may have better laws.
Yes, exactly. And they've got their own decentralized liquid flipping Bitcoin stablecoin thing, innovating, attracting all this investment. Will become like this, the Switzerland of the United Kingdom, or the ununited kingdom, I suppose. Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. In fact, Welsh Assembly, which is our local government, which doesn't have that much power, but you know, enough power, a little bit of power, which the England let us have. They're I don't even know if I can talk about it. They're doing some Bitcoiny things. It's pretty cool. I don't think I can talk about it.
Let's not mention it now. Half of it is, I'm going to cut out a lot of the chatter anyway, but yeah, let's not put it on recording if it's not legal or available.
No, you could put it. You could put it in there. I think I stopped myself just before I said something. Thankfully, we haven't got any Secret Service or anything which should come and kill me, so it's fine.
Yeah, it's not Germany.
No, well, where is it? Russia with the FSB stuff. It's pretty gnarly. Isn't it? What's going on in Russia at the moment? Jesus.
And we had You had a person that was doing contract work, and he had to leave Russia. Like he had to run for the border literally because all of his cards and bank accounts and everything was frozen, and he couldn't work, and he was getting paid by the US. So
these sanctions, man, like you talk about like you know, you have like with when you have war, like you're only supposed to use weapons which hurt other soldiers or the other, you know, the other army. And then if you have civilian casualties, it's a war crime. It goes against the Geneva Conventions.
Yep.
Sanctions are the most indiscriminate weapon you can use against a country, and actually the people who are really going to suffer are the normal people, normal poor people, like normal civilians. It's a war crime to do what the I mean, I condemn the stuff which Russia are doing to Ukraine, obviously, but in the same respect, I condemn like these sanctions which are happening to just the general Russian people. And I just think and also it's like cutting off your nose to spite your face. Like we're all going to suffer. Like we're an interconnected global, you know, economy nowadays. Like you can't just cut off this huge section of our production and economy, collective economy, and then not expect it to come and bite us in the ass, particularly after all the COVID. It's so scary.
And it's 2022. Like, is there no way that we can like identify who's actually an active military person versus a civilian? And if you want to sanction them, sanction the command center. You know, like everybody there, cut their bank accounts off. Don't cut the average developer in Donetsk or wherever just trying to live. That doesn't make any sense. You know.
Yeah, no, 100%. It's really sucks. And it's absolutely off. But it's interesting as well, like the Bitcoin being used for different, you know, like it's like double-edged sword, like oligarchs trying to use it to get around sanctions, and then the Ukrainians are trying to use it to kind of like take donations. Basically, everyone's just trying to use Bitcoin. This is why I've heard it mentioned on the news a bunch of times, because it suddenly becomes really relevant, you know, if you're trying to get around sanctions. But yeah, I mean, like, even oligarchs are like, most of them are detestable, terrible people, but who really took advantage of their own people. But a lot of them also hate Putin, and they don't approve of this war. And there's some of them who do, and absolutely go target them, sanction them. But the other ones, you know, they're like, you're like targeting an enemy of the guy which you're trying to target. Because the idea that, you know, Putin was reliant upon the oligarchs, that's gone now. Used to be a reality, but it's
my friends have been talking about. I can never pronounce his last name. Roman something. He like
the Chelsea guy.
The Chelsea guy, yeah, he's the biggest story across all my normie Telegram groups right now, because he had to sell the team, right? Or I think he's still trying to sell it.
Yeah, he got rid of Chelsea, sold Chelsea football team. Yeah. The whole oligarch story. There's a really good book called Disaster Capital by Naomi blah blah. Can't remember her name. And it's a tomb. It's ginormous. It's a huge book, and it's all about the development over the years of disaster capital. So the idea that you can create disaster and then capitalize off the disaster which happened, like, you know, like they would do in Afghanistan or something, or like the Iraq War, or and in Russia as well, you know, when the fall of the Soviet Union. And it's very interesting. So basically, it's like a big theme of the book is this idea of shock therapy, that you can go into society and you can radically change it overnight, and that it will somehow come out, you know, better out of the other side. It's actually quite lefty, actually, because she attacks Milton Friedman a lot in it, because he was involved in the chip stuff, like when they installed Pinochet, and they sort of backed like a military dictatorship where they kind of, you know, just took all the resources of the country and took them for themselves. Usual kind of story, really. But exactly, And but it's interesting, the oligarch stuff, because it's almost like, you know, the rich people of the world kind of failed because the oligarchs were able to like buy up all the resources. But she has some of the amounts, like they would buy an oil company. I can't remember the name of the oil company, but it's a famous oil company, like it's not a Shell, but something like that, like a huge oil company which you'd be aware of. And they would buy the company using because a lot of these were government officials. They would just use the tax money to pay for it, and then it would be under their own name. And they bought this, and it was like, you know, they would spend like $2 million or $3 million, and then the next year it'd be turning over like $1 billion. You know, like the sums. This is why they're so insanely rich. Like they have because they're basically like the USSR built up all these resources, the Iron Curtain fell, and then all those resources were bought by a small collection of people who hoovered it up, and then they're just, and it's kind of a shame because it's almost like if it did work, and if that whole society became like a free democracy, capitalist society, and those funds weren't instantly kind of hoovered up by these oligarchs. There was a huge amount of wealth there, which would have benefited the whole of the Russian people. But because of that, they've remained basically in a similar state as to what they were when the Iron Curtain fell. Lives have slightly got better in places like Moscow, I suppose. But anyway, it's a very good book, Disaster Capital, because she talks about those transitions in history where a country kind of turned upside down, and then it's usually worse off for it. But then she also talks about the oligarchs and how they managed to make their money. But they're a fascinating bunch of people.
Add it to the list.
Yeah. I remember there was this great Vice documentary where one of the Vice guys went to go meet an oligarch, and he's in this helicopter and he's flying for like 10 minutes over this forest. And then he says to the helicopter pilot, and he's like, when are we actually going to get to this oligarch's, land? And then the helicopter pilot was like, we've just been flying over it for 10 minutes. Like, this is all of his. He owns it all. And it's just that level of wealth. It's absolutely insane, incredible.
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
Ridiculous. Yeah, very, very weird. But I mean, as long as Europe doesn't fall into another war with itself, I think that's the. And then, obviously, troops pulling out of Ukraine, and it's just very scary. We have a capacity to go to war with ourselves in Europe, which we proved twice in a row, quite close succession, and it's surprising it hasn't happened since Second World War. And now, it's such a pivotal point in history, man. Like, it's quite scary.
The currencies are all crashing again. That's what sparked the war the last time. So unless something changes, I'm not very optimistic.
Yeah, it's funny. A lot of people in Telegram groups are talking about relocation. Then Southern Hemisphere is looking pretty appealing.
It really is.
I must admit.
Really is. Everything from
like El Salvador,
most of South America. I would even say the Pacific too, to a certain extent. I'm not sure what's going on down there, but they don't really seem to be involved in a lot of the geopolitics.
That's it. They seem to be separate from it all, don't they? And they're just. Yeah.
We'll see.
And I mean, these guys, this is the thing, like the power play, while our countries with central banks are going to be messing around with these centralized digital currencies, they're going to be innovating and building. Some of them will fuck up, I imagine, try and build on Ethereum or something, but a lot of them hopefully will build these really incredible financial tools which will spark all this innovation in industry, and their economies will grow. So I do think there is a real shift of power, which is, as long as the world doesn't fall into nuclear holocaust, of course, there will be a real shift of power structures and balances across the globe over the next decade or so.
Do you see like El Salvador being the center of that, or do you think that they're doing their thing, but somebody like Mexico, for example, could easily overtake them if they adopt a currency, because they have so much of a bigger adoption,
economy,
economy.
No, El Salvador stuff was great, and everything in the Salvador people are great. I think as soon as Bukele started going on about the city, people just kind of looked at him like it shook the confidence, and that's really when the price had a negative impact. I think it's the first thing to kind of push the price into that downward, into the bear was him, because if he was like, I'm going to use this money and this help stimulate growth and develop all these modern industry in Bitcoin, its surrounding technologies, and then I'll use some of that capital to then improve San Salvador, which I think is a wonderful city, just needs a little bit of work. Then I think that would have filled people, and I think that would have given people a lot of confidence. They'd be like, cool, this is a great project. But then when he gets up and he's like, I'm going to build a city, and it's a Bitcoin city, and it's on a volcano, and you're like, oh, you're kind of coming across like some megalomaniac kind of dictator type.
Like, fuck San Salvador, no one needs them. I'm going to build my own castle over here.
Yeah, exactly. It's what you do if you're super rich. You want to build your own city and name it. It's like Constantinople, isn't it? You name it after yourself. And anyway, but
same thing.
But San Salvador, I thought it was great. I thought it was a lovely city. It had a lot of potential, and it was big. It had big shops and stuff, and the people were nice. The food was good, and I don't know. I think it's a little bit of investment and improvement, and also in the countryside as well. Anyway, so that's why somewhere like Mexico, which has got a much more stable democracy, and it's got a more evolved economy, and like say, tons of people. There was that Max Kaiser tweet. He tweeted Honduras, didn't he? It's happening, and then the Honduras flag.
I didn't see that.
So
when was
that was like, oh, it was on Friday, I think. Friday afternoon. Okay. So I need to check on that, but it kind of felt like maybe he heard something down there, down the grapevine.
He has his ear to the ground for sure. So
yeah, I mean, it's in their interest if they can shake off the. I mean, saying that the stuff, all the shenanigans of the CIA in the 1970s, that's kind of, I think that's somewhat died down in Central and South America.
No, the Banana Republic is still there in legacy, so they're still doing their thing down there.
Yeah, there was a coffee guy. I bought a coffee off a guy for Bitcoin in El Salvador, and we were talking, and then on the end of it, he sort of tacked on, and we can get away from the US and the US dollar as a sort of like jokey thing, and I was like, yes, that's good, more of that, good for you.
Take that seriously.
yeah. Don't feel like you have to hide that's what you're is exciting you about this technology, because that is what's exciting about the technology is actually Bekele brought this up in the podcast. I thought it was a very relevant point, and it actually gave me a bit of respect for the dude. That when you have fiscal stimulus in the US and they devalue the dollar and build some stuff and do some infrastructure projects, all the countries which are then using the US dollar as for their currency, they don't see any of that fiscal stimulus, but all they get is an inflated currency.
That's correct.
I thought it was very cool. That's an insight I've not heard other people say, and also a good reason for them just not to use the dollar.
That's why he's such a polarizing figure.
Yeah,
because he seems to know exactly what it is, but still decides to be a little bit of a megalomaniac, just a little bit, just
yeah. It's the Chivo stuff, man. It was like the all these great projects out there, and then they just flop so badly on this wallet, and it's all kind of weird and buggy, and have people really got Bitcoin, and it's like you say, like he's quite polarizing, because when the guy one-to-one, when he's talking about Bitcoin, like he knows his stuff, and it's cool. Yeah. But then there seems to be this, I don't know, maybe it's his advisors or maybe it's the legacy power structures around him, which are kind of like effing things up. I think maybe he took himself too seriously as like a CEO type figure of the country, and then thought he could like pump it all with the Bitcoin City stuff. And I don't know.
But anyway, it's a long play that we don't see. Yeah, good luck to him. I hope it's a long play that he's just playing the politics to make it work. I don't know.
Yeah. I hear that the general El Salvadorians are still excited about the project, even though the price has done a downturn.
Nice.
That's nice. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. From people I know who've been out there, they said when they speak to like actual normal people, they're still interested and excited about Bitcoin. I think it's cool.
Yeah.
So and they'll be being educated. They'll be educating themselves. They've got access to phones and YouTube and all the stuff they'll have access to, haven't they? So they'll be learning more about Bitcoin. It's mad though. I remember I was with Christian Rutzel. I suppose it's this last story, but I was with Christian Rutzel from Raspberry Blitz, and he was at that first Lightning Hack Day in Berlin, where we're all buying. I bought the glass of wine with on Lightning, and I was on top of a bar in El Salvador, on a rooftop bar, and I was like, "Look, Christian, this bar accepts Bitcoin on Lightning, right?" And then I was like, "Turn around," and we turned around, and it's like this whole city, and I'm like, "This city accepts Bitcoin on Lightning." And it's like it's just seeing how much, because like all the best stuff like the LNBits, the pointer site, like all the cool stuff which I made came out of one little tiny bar in Berlin, and then because it's like a real world environment where you can test your ideas, isn't it? Like a playground, we can actually run these things in the wild and get feedback. To have like an entire city and like entire country to be like inputting feedback on what they use and how they're using Bitcoin. Maybe that's why we're getting all this crazy growth. Yeah. It's crazy. I'll let you go anyway for you. They're nice to speak to you, man.
All right, man. Cheers.
Good work. I'll check out Start 9. Thanks. Thank you very much.
All right, buddy. Bye.